welcome to episode 43 of UK League Chat. This time, of course, joined as ever by my co-host Tom, with his massive new microphone as well. So he's going to sound crystal clear. You're going to, literally, if you get up and walk away from your PC, even headphones off, you're still going to hear him. So there's no hiding from him with that piece of hardware, I don't think.
I'm probably the hardest person to get sound-wise, because I feel like Lee messes up every time, so I decided to make his job a little bit harder. Yeah,
nice one. And joining us today then is NLC caster Guldborg. Guldborg, how's it going? How are you doing?
It's going quite well. A bit of a boring day, really. Just been locked in my room the whole day with nothing to do. So I've been looking forward to getting on here and try
this. Now
you're
locked in a Discord call with Tom as well, so goes from bad to worse, really, don't it?
It's better than being locked up alone, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I'd assume, but I'll find out.
We'll ask you in an hour.
Hey, it depends what guest you ask, right? It depends what guest you ask.
No comment. Well, then let's start then, as we do usually with someone that we have on for the first time, just with a bit about how you kind of got into the role that you're currently doing. So for those that don't know, you are one of the NLC casters, but then also you work with Copenhagen Flames, right? As like sort of am I right? Sort of was a general manager. Now I think is it with the Fortnite team, especially now at the moment?
So how we do operating is we have a Counter-Strike team where our director of Esports is mostly operating that because we're having issues finding a coach that fits the kind of role we want in the talent development part. But I'm kind of his assistant learning from him. And then I'm on the Fortnite part of that, just taking care of the players, branding, speaking with them. We don't have sports psychologists and stuff like that. So it's usually up to managers to act like talking about the mental side and aspect of the game as well. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I do from them as well.
So how did you kind of get into that in the first place? Because obviously doing that with casting on the side, they don't, especially like where you say the sort of general manager type thing, it doesn't really seem like something that overlaps too much either, because you get a lot of like color casters going into coaching. So how did you come to do both of those?
It's in all honesty, it's a bit of a long story. We kind but to kind of shorten it up, as soon as I finished high school, I was starting my gap year, and doing that gap year, what you usually do in Denmark is that you kind of you get a job, you wait a year. After that year, you go out and travel from the money you kind of earned, and then you just go travel the world, right? And then you go back to uni afterwards. So that's kind of tradition in some sort of way. But what I didn't find any fucking jobs whatsoever. I think I applied for 50 jobs and I just didn't get anything. And then all of a sudden on my Facebook feed back then, a casting application job comes up, and it doesn't pay anything. I think it pays like 10 quid a day. That's like the day rate you're getting, right? But I'm just like, holy shit, I really want to try and do that. As soon as I got that job, because that was the first one I got, I was just stoked, jumping. I lived there back then, living in my mom's basement, literally the basement. Well, that was me. I was just jumping up and down when I got that. As soon as I got that job, the next day, I get a proper job as well. Like, it was so lucky. It just came like, so then it was the bakery that I worked at there that kind of gave me a job. And then straight after that day, my old school I used to attend to wanted to teach as well. So then I just had 3 jobs out of nowhere, and I didn't really, because I was behind. I didn't find any jobs in the beginning, so I was just like, fuck it, I'm gonna do all of them at the same time. So how my day was that I would wake up in the night at 3 a.m. I would go to the bakery at 4. I would work at the bakery for 4 till 9. Then after 9, I would go to the public school and teach there till like 4 p.m. in the daytime, in the evening. As soon as that was done, I would just rush home, get dressed, and take an hour transportation onto the bit of a studio we had back then. It was like 5 square feet. Like, it was not really a studio whatsoever. It was a small space crammed up with lamps and a webcam directly at me. And then I would be there to like 12 in the night and quickly go home and get as much sleep as I could. And that was just kind of how I kept on doing it on repeat. And obviously this was the Danish league I got back then. So what I did was I worked 2 years, not 2 years, I think like half a year. And then I kind of wanted to be like, you know what? Casting was fun, but I didn't get any other jobs like the Dreamhack back then that did Nordic League, and the LVP did UKLC. So I knew I wasn't going to get UKLC. And back then Dreamhack was hiring someone else. So I thought, I wanted the money I saved up. I wanted to go to Vietnam and teach English, so to kids in like poor villages and stuff like that, which wasn't a paid job or anything like that. It was just like charity, which I wanted to go. But before I went to that trip, Copenhagen Flames reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we're making a League of Legends team. We're in need of a manager. Would that be something you're interested in?" And I was like, so conflicted, because all of a sudden I thought I was leaving esports, but no, like, yeah, it was just dragging me straight back into it. I was like, all right, fuck it, let's do it. So I did coaching for 1 year at Copenhagen Flames as well, because we couldn't find a coach, but they were like, hey, you're kind of smart at the game, why don't you try and coach at the same time? And then I just became the coach instead. And then after that, league didn't really pay off in the Danish scene because the viewers weren't as high as people at first expected. It was tougher getting sponsorships. So they kind of just wanted to go out of league, and they offered me either I could come and work for them as an assistant general manager because they really liked my work ethic, or I could get the league spot we had, and I could start up my own organization if I wanted to. But back then, like, I was not going to do the organization stuff. That was just way too much time that I didn't have and didn't want to commit to it. And then I ended up at Flames, and during that time, I still wanted to try and get some caster gigs, but back then, Dreamhack finally got a better production side for it, where Orcs, Hiprain, Excoundrel was to do the Nordic League now as well. But back then, I was so bummed out because I didn't get it. I thought that I would be able to get it because I was like, okay, I'm the Danish caster that people know without being too like big mouthed here. So I was really bummed out. But then a lot of the fans I had on Twitter and friends was like tagging Dreamhack in all the Twitter posts and be like, where is Guldborg? Where is Nico, who was my co-caster back then? And basically that made Orcs, Excoundrel, and Hiprain reach out to me in my DMs and be like, well, dude, we're sorry. We didn't have a choice. We didn't know that we were going to do Nordic League and stuff like that. And I think because that I had my Danish community back me up so much that I did back then, that when they needed an analyst for the finals for the NLC and UKLC, I was the first one to come to mind for Orcs, Hiprain, and Excoundrel, just because that was what the fans had said. That was like the community out there. And then I got the Dreamhack next split, the summer split of NLC. When that got announced, Dreamhack reached out to me. Once again, I was no longer living in my mom's basement. I was living in my own apartment, but I was still jumping up and down, just running around and screaming in the fucking apartment because I finally got the job. And then just Flames were just really supportive of it. They set up the studio I was going to be working at because it was remote, but they wanted to make it cool. So they set up in an office space. They set up a camera. They set up a backdrop. They set up a computer for me. So I could work at Flames. As soon as we were going to NLC, I was going to be there for the after hours as well. So I could make it work at the same time. And that's kind of just, ever since then, I just ended up in this situation where casting is usually in the night. The job is in the day. So it's just, it's a lot of work hours where I'm overworking myself, but it's the fucking dream, right? So like, it's really worth it.
So that's where like that black backdrop came from, because I remember always thinking, like, he's gone through. I remember thinking every week, like, Guldborg goes through all this effort to get this nice backdrop, and he's like standing up. He looks like he's ready to go. On the rest of like, Hiprain's got his bed unmade in the background. So yeah, it makes sense.
Guldborg, though, I do want to ask one question. Would you have gone for Guldborg Gaming or Guldborg Esports if you were getting that? If you're getting that team, it's the one of the two, you know.
I think Guldborg Gaming. That's like GG, you know. Right? So it's an easier acronym.
It's all about the branding, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
No, but it's interesting to see kind of like doing this kind of job where it's dual, because normally what we see is that either essentially most of the time actually the organization doesn't really agree with it, and we've had guests on where it's like they've wanted to do other things and they've been told that they cannot do. Obviously we're not going to name names, but people will probably tell. But it's nice to see kind of an organization embrace that and kind of say, well, actually as well, for them as well, it probably boosts their brand because you're on these kind of these events, you're casting, and then people just go onto your Twitter, and on your Twitter, it says exactly what else you're doing as well. So it benefits both as well at the same time.
I really love it, and they're a really supportive bunch. So we recently went into kind of half lockdown in Denmark as well, and the first thing my boss does was, he knew I was living alone, but he was like, if I wanted to meet up at the office, we could make exceptions if I ever felt lonely or something like that locked in, because I do live in a pretty big apartment by myself. So like, they're lovely people. and I probably wouldn't be where I am today without ever getting that offer. I consider myself really lucky, like so lucky in my journey to get where I am today.
And it does normally seem to be a thing as well. We've seen from a lot of people. It's like just as soon as it's like, right, okay, it's not gonna be for me. It seems like you said, it sucks you back in. It's like, actually, no, you are gonna do this. We were just waiting for you to give up, and then we were gonna give it you. You know, it's like there's so many stories like that, and I guess it shows kind of like, you know, that kind of determination that you've just got to keep going. And even when you think that it's not gonna happen, sometimes when you think that, that's actually when it does happen. And it's kind of like, it normally works out the way it goes. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't. There's a lot of other people, like you said, like, I think everybody's lucky to be in esports, at least right now. But it doesn't mean that it's kind of like the be all and end all, and that there's always going to be other paths. And probably people didn't expect right at the beginning that obviously you'd be doing the path which you're doing as well. I don't think like 3-4 years ago you would expect that this exactly would be the path in esports, and it goes through with everybody.
I think it was definitely the dream to either. I thought, okay, I know I want to be working in esports. It's all I do every day, but I didn't know I was going to be doing it like dual, like being a manager at the same time doing casting. And as she said, I've thought about that myself. Like the thing, every time I think, oh, maybe I need to quit, it's like, I don't know if it's fate or destiny. I usually don't believe in stuff like this, right? But it's like, it just sucks me back in. I wanted to go to Vietnam, as I said. No, here you get this offer. Oh, I didn't get Dreamhack, but no, immediately Dreamhack reached out to me back again. I kind of like, every time I kind of give up, it just kind of just happens. Maybe I should give up about anything I wanted. Like,
oh, I'm never going to.
Am I going to get a nice house one day? No, I give up.
What was the thing? 'Cause I think quite recently, wasn't it? There was that Denmark like 1v1 tournament.
Yeah.
What was that about? Because I'm pretty sure there was like a UK one. I remember Chibs was like cast in the final or something, but I don't remember there being any players that was like recognised. But then with the Danish one, I saw like it was like Poulsen, then Voxney in the final, wasn't it? So is it something that in the Danish scene is taken quite seriously?
I mean, Red Bull, I don't know. I think it happened last year where they did what was called Red Bull Player 1, which they had to rebrand. But back then, it was also at a big LAN at Copenhagen, which is called Copenhagen Games, where players like Guldborg comes, who's also a big name in the industry. You got Fiddle, who also played Italian NLC for Dusty as well. So it's like the Danish community is so local as well when there's finally stuff happening. So when Red Bull created that tournament, everyone was signing up for it as well. So when they repeated it this year again, all the big name was there. Like Ray was part of the tournament. Was knocked out by Poulsen in quarterfinals as well before the offline tournament happened. I think that League of Legends in Denmark by the core is just so passionate when you get to the people actually playing it, the pro players, the community we have. And I love Red Bull for doing what they did and actually having an offline event where they had the players come out, be at hotels, give us like a 3-course meal and just treating us so well. Like it was awesome because usually everything's been online, right? So it was just perfect. But what they had us do was they had us take Corona tests. A test you get response for like 10 minutes and you have to take it up your nose. It's like this really long string that you need to have up your nose for 10 seconds. And they just push it further and further until your tears start running in one of your eyes. It's the most unpleasant experience whatsoever. But I was the first one who did it, so I got to laugh at the players when they did it, and that was pretty good.
Yeah, get out of the way. It's worse, like, if you're seeing everyone else do it, you just feel worse beforehand, especially with the reaction. But I'd seen like videos of those. I'm like, doesn't it make anyone sneeze?
No, I've never seen that. Oh my god, no, that sounds horrible.
That's why it's like, what if it just tickles a bit? You just go up in your brain.
It's horrible.
They're not nice.
Yeah.
They're not nice at
really
all.
Not. Really not.
But about like the Danish community, like you were saying there, like League of Legends in Denmark obviously is very historic. You know, there's a lot of famous Danish people. Do you think that then that's why these tournaments like this are relatively popular? Because it does very much seem like Denmark and League of Legends are so close and such a good community that you see kind of everybody in Denmark seems to have either scrimmed with each other or kind of knows each other. It's a very close community, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Like, all the players who came to the tournament were all good friends before they came, because 3 of them were already played on a team together, and everyone, when they're facing each other, just typing shit in all chat against each other. And it's like, we all played pretty much all of the upcoming Danes that you see, then Voxner, Poulsen, or Fiddle, or some of the others you have. We all played in the National Danish League before we went on to NLC or other tournaments, and being there, it's a very vocal community on Twitter as well. Beforehand, it was very toxic and a lot of trash talk, but nonetheless, you got to know each other, like that you would trash talk. But usually what ends up happening is you trash talk each other so much on Twitter, like to the point where it seems like you hate each other. Then you meet each other offline at the tournament, and everyone's just friends. After the tournament end, everyone's just got drinking, having a good time, and then it's just like, next season they're friendly, then they're friendly, and then the new players come up, banter. It's just kind of that cycle that goes through, basically.
Well, let's move from people being friendly, and maybe talk about quite a recent topic.
Oh no! Do we have to talk about this now? It was going well, Lee. We were positive, we were happy, but yeah, go on, introduce it. Go on, Lee. It's your fault.
Actually, I've got a positive spin on it. And for anyone that doesn't realise what we're talking about, of course, is that the news of Munster not being in the NLC for certain reasons that we weren't on the team, so we don't know the exact ins and out of it. There's stuff that's been said on Twitter. Should I get
the NLC of what, Lee?
You've cut
Should if I say exactly what the NLC has put, I'll go and search for it. Oh, should I get what the NLC have put?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Search for it.
But while you're doing that,
okay.
The positive that I'll spin on it is, this time last year was like roughly when the whole LVP dropping out happened, and we were like a bit in the just wondering if there would be a league to even watch. So the fact that there's any news from Dreamhack themselves that includes in it talking about next season going ahead, then that's only positive. I mean, it could be worse.
Dreamhack's so good. Dreamhack is so good as a tournament organizer. I gotta say, they're one of the most pleasant ones to work with. This may be a bit controversial, but I actually, after going to the EU Masters, I actually enjoyed working with Dreamhack more than Riot, actually. Wow. And I think that says a lot in the community, because Riot is held to a high standard. Not saying I didn't enjoy being at EU Masters, but it's just like Dreamhack, they're just treating you so nice.
I think actually then, before we go into actually the situation that's happened, it's actually interesting to see someone have kind of a connection to Dreamhack in terms of like working for them. Can you still hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, a little bit. I think we got the gist.
Oh yeah. Oh no, is the new mic not working? God damn it! I'm just kind of like saying, like, it's very interesting that you got someone kind of working with Dreamhack. Like, there's been criticism, let's be honest, about how they have organized the tournament in terms of timing and stuff like that. Do you think that that's kind of then teething issues for them going in, and how was it operationally for you as a caster?
So as a caster, the dates did change in the beginning from what we got, but it was like a weekend only. But what I know happened was that it was also just pretty much miscommunication between Riot and Dreamhack. So Dreamhack actually put out their schedule first and submitted it to Riot, which all DRLs have to do. You have to submit your schedule. And then after that, Riot, still knowing that Dreamhack was where it was, put EU Masters there, because Worlds were the week up to, so that was actually the shortest they could do, because they had to do so in the perfect world, EU Masters are being held at the LEC studio, right? And Worlds were being held at China, so that would have been two separate things at two separate places. But since Worlds had to be held or recorded or broadcasted at the EU studio, EU Masters had to be put back a week at the same time then. So that made all the scheduling be extremely weird. So at the LFL, they had to do EU Masters qualification before the LFL even ended. At LVP, they were still playing the quarterfinals or semifinals, like the finals, while EU Master happened. So it was not only NLC, it was everywhere in Europe, basically, that someone felt the consequences of that. I think that's a picture that people are missing, kind of. But I also we all told Dreamhack that this is not okay, like, and they listened. I know that they're coming up with a better schedule for this split as well, because they're not idiots. They know that it was not the perfect kind of schedule that they could have gotten, but they also couldn't change it because they were at BBC, right? And that's That's like you get a specific time schedule where you're allowed to broadcast. You can't just be like, oh, let's put this on another date. That's kind of not how it works. So it was a lot of unfortunate events that just happened due to Corona as well. So yeah, mismanaged maybe, but obviously I hope they will do it better, and I know they will do it better this split.
Well, it's good to hear that there's actual like communication which is going on, and that it's not just the kind of, it's okay having kind of a not as successful process as what you think, as long as you can then work on it for the next split and use that, and actually not think of it as, oh, it was bad, oh well, that's it then. Which for the UK scene we've had quite a lot, because it feels like, oh, this didn't go well, we'll just change everything up. Yeah, we'll new format.
Yeah, breath of fresh air. Have you got it up, Tom?
Yes, I'm not going to read it all, but so they've said that so what's happened is that Phelan Gaming, who competed in the NLC under Munster, will no longer participate in the NLC. He said the organisation has got moved down to the UKLC. The reason for this, of what they've said, is it's due to operational constraints from the summer season, which have been resolved. Dreamhack has worked with Karen Walsh, who's the CEO of Phelan Gaming, and have mutually agreed that the team will participate in the UKLC. As a result, that means that the Esports Masters winner, KOVA, have been promoted to the NLC, which means one less UK org. I know I got flamed for saying that they are Irish, but it's a UK representative. It's still for me.
Yeah.
But KOVA is up because rightfully so, they won Masters. It's a bit of a messy situation, if we're being honest. Is it the best way that they could have handled it? I think promoting KOVA definitely was. I think it would. There are a few people who possibly would say, should a UK org have gone up? I would have said no, because then KOVA's achievements of what they actually managed to do by winning the competition, which is a promotion tournament, kind of are nullified, and I think that would be unfair to them. There's then controversy around whether Phelan or not should be in the UKLC. I think it's kind of, for me personally, it's we'll see what happens. It definitely feels like they've been given a second chance. Yeah. Whether they deserve one or not, I think that a lot of people are on either side. But we'll see how they perform this split and how things go.
Yeah.
And it could just be a bad situation that happened. However, without going into like details which we don't want to discuss, which haven't been disclosed, it's not looking good. I think is what I would say.
Talking about whether or not Phelan should be there is, I think, it's something that's probably hard to talk about without really knowing the exact goings on. From what I'll say, I won't say anything that's basically not been said on Twitter. What people have said is it's because Munster didn't pay the players, essentially. And what people have been saying is that, and this is the part that I suppose is, you maybe don't know if it's going to be the truth or not unless you were involved, about whether it was sort of Phelan making the contracts without Munster telling them they'd give them the money for it, or whether it was that Munster maybe turned around at the last minute and didn't want to actually give the money that they'd agreed to. So it could really be either way without actually being like involved with it. I suppose you can't really tell. And I guess if it is the latter and it is more Munster just sort of changing their minds or something on their end, you can understand why Phelan would be given a second chance in the lower league. If it's the first one and it's just Phelan have done the whole thing themselves and just screwed over Munster or tried to pull their leg, then you could make the argument they probably shouldn't get the second chance. So it's really, without actually knowing either way, it is quite hard to say. But yeah,
I think it's a bit of both. From what I've heard, just behind the scenes and without going into too much details. At the beginning of the split, I did hear that Munster cut the funding that they initially had promised due to Corona. They're a rugby club, right? So when Corona hit UK or wherever they're located, obviously had to go in lockdown and they had to save money. So the kind of budget for trying to pull an esports organization did get minimized as far as I have heard. But at the same time, you can also, even though your budget get cut, then you have a budget to work with. That budget can still be mismanaged at the same time. So without knowing what specifically happened, I think it's somewhere in between those two things.
And I think it's difficult as well because And the only thing which I can think of is what Ferndog tweeted and I think he said that he said in his tweet that legal proceedings were occurring. Now, obviously, the statement has said that they have been solved. Whether that means that the decision of what they're doing with Phelan has been solved is a different thing than kind of what's actually happening legally. And so it could be a case. Again, this is all speculation. I don't want to. This is not fact or fiction. It's speculation. It could be the case that does Dreamhack want to just completely eliminate an organization from the pyramid when actually they've not necessarily been as bad as what people perceive them to have been. And so I think by dropping them down, I think is a sensible decision. And then I bet you any money that Dreamhack will be monitoring Phelan, like they will probably monitor every other organization as well, to ensure that if something like this does happen again, you would hope that that is like the last chance. But for me, it's so hard to kind of judge what is Munster and what is Phelan. And I know a lot of people have strong feelings, either way. We obviously, as a UK podcast for League of Legends, have to cover it. But we don't want to be going around and saying that Phelan should be dropped. We have our own personal opinions and stuff. I know that I tweeted out saying that I don't think it's a good look for the UK org. Then people immediately threw what I would call the Andy Murray excuse, where he's Britain's best tennis player, but he's also Scottish if he doesn't play well. For me, Munster, despite being Republic of Ireland to a wider community, represented the UK. I also call it a Rogue situation. I explained it to you, Leah, as well. Yeah. Rogue is an American organization, yet you would say that they represent Europe in the LEC. And for me, why, if they don't represent the UK, why are they in the UKLC as well? I think is another thing as well. But for the wider community, I think it affects the UK orgs. I think we've still got really good orgs. I know Crane came out with a tweet who we had on last week about the worry of UK orgs and the kind of the difference between Nordics and the UK in terms of how they're run. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but I do think there are good org out there, Barrage being one of them, who have always admitted that they've not had the biggest of budgets. They've always admitted that they're probably one of the lower budget teams in there. And M&M as well, another organization. And then you've got Fnatic and XL, but I would class them more as global brands, really, as kind of like UK. So it's an unfortunate situation. It's a situation which, let's be honest, nobody wanted. Like, nobody wants kind of this, especially Dreamhack in the like debut league. To have this going on with them is rough. Mm-hmm. But hopefully things can start getting a little bit better, and this doesn't happen again, really.
Yeah, and you feel I think it's feel especially for the players as well, because not to like excuse them underperforming, but like it kind of makes sense, right? The way that they just seem to not play any, and obviously we've talked on the show before about and had other people saying about how that maybe the roster wasn't put together properly anyway. Maybe they didn't really fit together as they should have done, but it's still like look at the roster on paper. It should have still been better than it was, and it kind of makes sense now that you see what's happened. One thing I want to talk.
Congratulations to KOVA. I do want to stress though, I'm really excited to see KOVA because like they deserve it. They should have gone in. I agree that if you've won Masters and one team has to go down for unfortunate situations, then it should be the winner of Masters, and it'd be nice to see this organization in. So I am looking forward to seeing what they're doing. I'm a bit worried for them because I don't know how much time they've kind of had to know that they're going in. Because I wonder if they just had a team locked and now they're like, oh, maybe we need an NLC caliber team and not a Masters caliber team. So that could be a worry. But I would hope that I hope that they were aware of this situation enough to be told this could be happening, and so they've been smart about decisions, which I expect them to be.
I can only imagine, right? But at the same time, like I think it's nice Finland get another spot in. They only have ENS representing them right now, whereas Denmark have two teams. Norway got Nordvin and Riddle as well, which is two teams. So it's nice that some of the other Nordic countries as well get some more representation. So it's not only ENS, but also some other countries. So what? Now we have Barrage and we have M&M, so that's also 2 UK teams. So it's a bit of like from country to country, kind of like still a nice wide representation. Like you even have Excel and Fnatic, but as you said yourself, kind of broader picture here, like international kind of teams at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I wanted to go back to then, that was a bit of a hot topic last night at least, was Crane's tweet, and for me this had to.
Are you telling me there's controversy in the UK in Twitter?
There was two controversies. I think one of them we don't even need to go into, about a bit more about the Irish UK thing, but this one, when I read it, I was thought, okay, he's just baiting, and then it actually like kind of kicked off, and then maybe he wasn't baiting. Basically, what he said was, there was an initial tweet just saying that it's maybe a wake up call for the UK teams or for the UK orgs, and just saying that more needs to be done if we're not going to be just constantly outdone by the Nordic teams. And then he followed it up by a hot take saying that he thinks unless there's changes, that he could see all the UK orgs, all the UK non-academy orgs being relegated by the end of the year. So basically in 2 splits, he could see both Barrage and M&M going out without any, unless there's changes made and they step up their game. Do either of you see a world where that happens?
I don't know. To me, it was kind of interesting because I have never really regarded the difference in kind of organizations that big. Like obviously we can talk about some funding being bigger than others, but just on paper, looking the rosters being fielded every now and then, like the Dusty roster, like and even though the Godsend roster that was fielded on the deadline of the day because Godsend didn't have a team, so they're just like, oh well, we know you're looking, so you 5 get in here. They were only a Danish like first division team that was supposed to go through the TLE Master and then try to qualify. I don't think that you need the best budget out there to actually compete. I just think you need to be actually have a pretty good look around the market and the players, like who's free, what can we make work here, because the whole Godsend roster which made playoff, none of them were contacted by the NLC teams, right? They are going to be a first division Danish team. So I think that there's a lot of untapped potential out there where you just have to be willing to take the chance on it. But without going too much into it, I don't know actually, because I know an argument is that which was also been an argument recently, is that UK teams never fields UK players. But I actually wanted to ask you guys, why is that? Because I feel like there's still some good UK players out there, like Sof and Chimera was that support again, who just played for Nordic and NLC for Prosper. Like,
well, I would say Sof is because of Pad, because Pad has his trifecta of Sof, Achu, and himself, which he's always like. He's had them at Phelan, he had them at M&M, and he had them at Tricked. So that's probably why Sof didn't pick a UK organization, is because of him. I'd say, well, Prosper was more of a choice as well, I believe. I think we had him on the podcast, and I think he said that he wanted to take time off and kind of sort out kind of what he wanted. He basically said that, I think it was along the lines, though, I could look back, but I think it was along the lines that he had offers, but he wanted like basically a better offer where he felt that he could do something.
He made the argument, I think, that and this was like more aimed at the Nordic teams. I don't know if he had contact with the UK teams, but he was basically saying that the UK players in the NLC era haven't been getting tryouts, and was basically kind of hinting really that it could be a bit unfair or maybe a bit biased. Actually, that was something I wanted to ask yourself, Guldborg, whether because the way that I could see it, like especially if you were a Nordic org, and you've maybe got 1 or 2 Nordic players picked up already, it would kind of, I guess, seem like you would just think when you're asking your players who do you want to play with or who do you think is good, they're going to obviously go for their friends, and it doesn't seem like it would maybe be a conscious choice, but something maybe just natural. Like when you were making your like Danish league orgs, do you ever think, oh, maybe I'll check over in the NLC and get Froskurinn and Chimera or anything like that? Like it doesn't seem like something would cross their mind. But obviously it's a bit different. NLC has it in the actual pool now, has UK players. But
I think like during the Nordic League, we were just focusing on we wanted 5 Danish players when we were coaching that back then, just because that it's just like it makes more sense to have a common language being spoken. But I also think League of Legends is it's a lot about who you know, not only in NLC but also further up in other leagues, like who are you going to play with? Oh, I want to play with this guy. But I also think that you can make teams work just based off 5 friends because they will work so much better than just 5 randoms getting together. Like going back to a bit to the Munster situation, we don't know if it was because they're not being paid that they didn't perform, but it was 5 players that were supposed to be really good on paper who just did not work at all as a team. And that was not even the first split. Like the first few weeks of the split, they didn't perform for what we expected there either. So whereas Riddle, there were good names, but there were also 5 good friends who came together. Godson was also 5 good friends who just wanted to play Telia, right? So, and they still made playoffs. I think you sometimes need to take a look at and maybe take a step back from what you know they can achieve right now on paper in a roster and see, okay, what's the potential of 5 players who will always give the right feedback to each other because they're that comfortable with each other and actually try to make something work with them. And I think that's something that is sometimes being disregarded as well when building a roster.
I think as well what's interesting because there's always this narrative of UK Nordics where people like to the point where people forget that the Nordics is a collection of countries. Where you probably take it country by country. It's not as drastic in terms of UK to Nordics as it is. It's still big, but it's not as drastic as if you could put the whole like 5 or 6 nations together to one nation. There are UK players out there. There are definitely, you look at like Dan, who's now gone to the LEC. You've got X-Matty, but again, I'm listing names who are gone essentially. But like there are names out. Deadly being one of them. Soft, Chimera, like you said, even you, sir. There's loads of players there who could do stuff as well. Every time I think of another name, and I just don't want to keep adding names, but like Froskurinn, another one. But I think it's the case of like, why should a UK player have to pick a UK organization if there are Danish teams, if there are Nordic teams available? And 2, why should a UK organization have to pick a UK player when there are Nordic teams available? They should pick the players which they feel like is the best suit for them. For example, that's why Pad picked a Chew and Soft. It's like if Soft was Danish or Norwegian, he probably would have still picked Soft anyway. Not because of his nationality, because he likes the play style of him. Sure. It's the same reason why Envision picked this youngster called Alex in the UKLC, I believe it was something like that. And now he's going to I think a top ERL. Was
it Mad Lions? I think.
Yeah, he's going.
I think it is. Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's like they knew that he wasn't seen as a Swedish prospect. He was seen as a prospect for that organization and someone they could do. It wasn't because of his nationality, it was because of his skill why they picked him up. And I think that there does need to be a point where you should look at skill over nationality. Nationality does play a part though, like you've said, but I think that we will start seeing British players going, especially now we've got this second division building talent. We've got a lot more kind of grassroots building the UK sports scene. Because if we're being honest, the UK esports scene isn't as big as the Nordics or even as Denmark or Norway or as other kind of things, especially in like League of Legends. You think like in Danish yourself, like we talked about, Danish League of Legends have been going on for a long time. High established, high elite players in League of Legends have been going in Denmark for a long time. So it's the UK scene will get to that. We will start seeing players, but I'm not. I think they should have one. A UK org should have at least one, but it's more of a joke. It's more of a meme more than anything. Yeah, I don't think it's anything serious.
It comes down to a lot of the banter on Twitter as well, right? It's always like, "Oh, you're UK org, where's your players then?" Right? Like it's just it's an easy target as well, just because
exactly.
But it's just as you said, like. Why should you look at the nationality? The only reason why would be if you're talking about branding perspective. Then, like, if you want to be the UK or feeling UK players, then that makes sense.
Well, look at Ents. Look at Ents's exactly. Team last split. That was even we had the coach on, and they said that it was the best team that they wanted, but it was completely a branding exercise as well. They wanted them all to have the same nationality, to be the home nationality. To be is it Finnish? Yeah. And so they wanted to build this Finnish super team. They probably could have got like better players individually, but they wanted this kind of branding, which is also important for for a team as well.
Yeah, I suppose with going for like a branding perspective, it's something that maybe like I think it's just with relegations as well. It's so much riskier. Like if you could get relegated every split, there's a chance to. Then your sole focus really has to be on getting the best roster you can. I think that's got to be the priority ahead of anything branding. It's and thinking about like if you want to be doing well in the league and you want to be obviously focusing on where you finish, that's probably the first priority for pretty much every team should be really. And we're going to talk about a UK team having to, or trying to get at least 1 or 2 UK players. To get those UK players that are good enough to challenge for the NLC, how are you going to get them away from XL Fnatic? Because if you look at who those players have been recently, it is Dan, Xmatty, Deadly, Kasing, and maybe a couple of others that have been on other teams here and there. But then those teams, XL I think especially do it, where they do try and get the better UK players and go for that branding thing themselves where they can, because of course it's their academy team, even their main team is franchise, so they can afford to do it a bit with them as well. So yeah, I think it would probably be hard for a UK team really to get the sort of top caliber UK players even away from just those two sides, I would think. But
yeah, there definitely seems to be a high ceiling with UK players. That's what I've realised. But like Kasing's a free agent. Yeah, it looks like he's going to, is it Movie Stars? I think the rumor is. Yeah, obviously I don't know anything about the budget and stuff like that. I can't imagine Barrage or Eminem being like, Kasing, do you want to play for us? We'll give you this amount of money. Yeah, he's going to be on a lot of money for in an ERL standard at Movie Star, who is an organisation which does have a lot of budget normally, historically anyway. It's a big organisation. So while Barrage and Eminem would have loved to have got Kasing, or Xmatty is rumored to be Xmatty is leaving because Fnatic have announced their team. I think it's like K Corp in the LFL. Again, probably these UK organisations would love to get them, but because they are at a very high skill level, it takes a lot of money to take these UK players and bring them into those organisations. Mm-hmm. So you've got to deal with what you've got to deal with, and maybe this is a little bit to say what Crane is saying is because the budgeting maybe is a little bit lower. Like I don't know, this is just speculation. Maybe the budgeting is because it's a little bit lower in these UK orgs, that they can't afford to get these high Premier League UK players because they're going to the LFL. I know that there's a couple UK players, I think, in like Turkey or in other LFL or in other like ERLs as well. Anyway, so it's not that those UK players are there, but can they afford even to bring those in without detrimenting like the entire 5-man squad essentially?
Yeah. Here's the thing though, like I don't think that you can come in as a UK organization if you're not BTXL or Fnatic and think you can field a roster that would actually win the NLC. I know this sounds really rough, but like talking about the new rosters BTXL are bringing and Fnatic rising,
it's mental.
Exactly. But as you said, BTXL, they're only fielding one UK player, which is Deadly. The rest is Arome, it's Macoon, it's Hatrix, it's Advien. Those are just like they're not UK players at all. And the same could be said for Fnatic Rising, who's also Still Pride, Maxi, Fepavin, Beam, and Bravado. Or Rux has essentially been brought in, right? So none of these are UK players. I even know that I was speaking to some Nordic resident players as well, and some of them were trying to not get teams in NLC specifically because of these two rosters, because we only have 2 master spots. So they were like, okay, with these 2 spots from Fnatic Rising and BTXL with their rosters, I'm probably not going to get my name out there in the international or the European world just because I won't make EU Masters because these 2 is going to be fielding them. So I think that as an organization, if you know you don't have the budget to contest these rosters, that shouldn't be your objective. Like that should just be playoffs and playing in the league. So that should essentially be, I think that should be the goal of the other UK orgs. Get playoffs, see if you can create a miracle run or anything like that. But it's really hard to expect to actually win the league with the budget you have, contrary to the budget that XL is going to have and Fnatic is going to have.
I think obviously we'll go a little bit more in depth about next season, like later on when all the rosters are kind of like come in and stuff. But I think that this is while I look at these rosters, and I'm personally as a fan, I can't wait to see these rosters play. I think this is great. And I think, to be fair, you would hope that actually brings appeal to young kind of up and coming kind of players and say, look, you get the chance to face these players, like kind of market it as all these other esports organizations in this league should be going for trying to let's see who we can get the next kind of star player. Like obviously get some like, older kind of, well, not older, but people who've played the scene a little bit more, they're also important as well. But kind of, bring in like a couple like either unknown entities or players which are rising in the ranks, whether that be in the UK scene or the Nordics, and test these players out. Because I think that's when it gets really interesting. Because we even, like I said, we saw it with Alex in Envision, absolutely smashed it for Envision, and is now at an ERL. Like he was clearly watching, like, I didn't watch too much of the UKLC, but watching like enough of it, he was clearly head and shoulders above a lot of people. And even in the NLC 4, while it wasn't like great for him, it's like you could still see that there was quality there, and that was the reason. Let's see what we could find the next person of. And I think that's what I hope we get to see, is that we get to see kind of these new top laners try and go up against a Rome, which is insane to kind of think that is a possibility. It's such a golden opportunity, I think, for some of these teams.
You have a guy who just went to Worlds. He was at Worlds. Like, we're not even just talking NLC. This guy was at Worlds and is playing NLC next split. Like, I was looking at these roster announcements and I was like, we're going to be doing interviews with these guys when they win. We're going to be casting and watching them. Like, I was such a fanboy. I'm so hyped to seeing these guys playing just because of the level that they would bring in. And I kind of hope that will affect the other teams. In the beginning, I hope all the teams will get absolutely stomped, just because you need to know what it feels like. This is the best scrims you can be getting. It's going to be your officials against these teams, because it's not only the best ERLs players, it's the best players you can get in Europe almost, like just in this specific place. So
I think as well,
so hyped for spring.
It's not an unpopular opinion that basically Fnatic and XL have built these rosters to win EU Masters.
Yes.
And I think the general consensus is, from when they saw these rosters, that is a legitimate thing which could happen. Either one of these. They built these rosters to win it. They're already considered one of the favorites, despite half the rosters not being competed for the other teams. Because this is a roster which they have designed for that. XL were, let's be honest, embarrassed the fact that they didn't get into EU Masters last split, and they kind of blew up that roster. They kept deadly, but what they've built around it is a ridiculous. They've got a world's top laner. They've decided, we're definitely making it out this split, and I think there's a lot of people which kind of hope that people say it on the opposite side, like, oh, I hope they don't do as well. No, I do. I hope they look like the best team, because as well, if we're looking at it from a seeding perspective, if these two teams do really well in EU Masters, how could then, Riot say this should be 2 seeds? Yes. It might have to be, we have to take a hit for 2 EU Masters, just for then in 2022 we get 3 seeds, 4 seeds, and then you can start building kind of the scene around it. It could be a long-term plan. With that to happen, those 2 teams have to do well, but right now, just looking at them, you can't say that they're not going to do well in EU Masters. It would be ridiculous for them not to, and it would be embarrassing for both organizations as well. They've openly come up. You won't sign those players. They've basically picked the best of the best in the RLs. Some of these players I could even see playing in the NLC, in the LEC now. And they've picked some of them. It's insane. And even if there are rumors that it might be, how long is Arome going to be at BTXL? There's that kind of thing of what happens with Cries, and I think the intention is Cries to obviously do well. They believe in Cries, but even if, say, someone like Cries does go to BTXL, I still think that is a great player to have in that squad, and I still think the same thing applies there as well.
That's the thing, right? You have both teams that they, as you said yourself, because I do think it's a small theory here that there is a reason why they field these players here, but there's also a reason why that Kreis is the starting top laner for the main XL roster. It is because they believe that he's the one who's going to do well. But as you said yourself, there is the pressure of a Roman being on the academy team that you can easily go like move up and also know that he is LEC ready. And the same can be said for Fnatic Rising, right? Niski is also knowing that Fepperman waiting just like if on the Fnatic Rising roster as well. But even then, right, if they swap it out, it's still gonna be Niski on Fnatic Rising then. Like it's still good players that you're gonna be getting. The only reason the only kind of concern you can have with this is the synergy. How is this going to affect the team, not only the main, but also the academy teams, because you're bringing in and swapping up new players. We all saw what happened last EU Master where MagiFelix went to Worlds and they had to play with Chips at EU Masters, which is obviously a disaster because Chips hadn't been playing at all and it was just out of nowhere. They're kind of bringing MagiFelix with them. So I'm kind of hoping, for the sake of our region, that these swaps do not come in. I hope we get to see these teams blend well together so they're a well-oiled machine when they go to EU Master, because we want more spots. Like, we were 2 regions that were being combined and we got 2 spots out of it. We had 4 before.
The UK got worse from the merger. Like we had, I think we had 2 guaranteed group spots. I think the UK scene, and then they merged and like, oh no, we're dropping one of yours as well. Even though it was like it was more than double the talent, because the players which even came in, like you had the likes of Senkux and and even Maxi, who yes they wanted to play together, but probably if you look at, they could have been at top ERLs and the likelihood is we know that Maxi's now at Fnatic Rising, so they could have gone elsewhere probably if they wanted to.
And it was something we actually remember when the seeding came out and we were talking about it on some of the episodes back then. We even speculated that it could, disincentivize players from coming to the NLC, because if you want to come and show yourself, what's the point of coming when the only 2 spots are most of the time you expected to go to the academy? So it's not a surprise to hear you say that either, and it is quite, it's a bit sad really to hear that. Because
that's also right. Like, one of the memes Crane posted was that I think someone posted it recently, where Nordic and UK fighting, and then Italians in the background stealing the players, right? Like, that is true, because a lot of Nordic players feel like it's easier to go to Italy, get that EU Master spots, and then make that work. You take a look at Samsung Morningstar's last split, who is the Italian roster that really surprised a lot at EU Masters, taking games of Schalke, taking games of LDLC. That was 3 Nordic players on that roster. Steinbusser, there was Naita, and Goopy, who could easily have been a strong roster fielded in the Nordics, but just because they wanted more success for themselves and their brand and as a player, it's easier for them to move to Italy, just because they know it's easy to get EU Masters. So it is also kind of something scaring the players away that believe that they are good players, but they're not that good yet, where they can come and contest Febvin or Rome, stuff like that, right? And I like, understandably so.
I think as well is that, and I'm glad that this is the worry which I had with 2 seeds, is that, and I'm glad that it didn't happen, because Riddle did end up getting through, whether it was through planes. But I basically said that if it was XL and Fnatic who had got through, you wouldn't have known that the Nordics that it was merged together, because you would have just saw 2 UK orgs. Like, from an outside perspective, someone who doesn't watch any ERLs but then maybe tunes into EU Masters, they would have seen Fnatic and XL and they would have just thought it was the UK scene, because they were the only 2 teams which should have gone. Luckily, Riddle did end up actually going and made, I would say, a good account for themselves for the amount of games they had to play anyway.
Yeah, in a row. They had no breaks. They didn't scrim. They're just going all the way. And how unlucky are they that they're facing LDLC, when there are teams like Intrepid Fox who would go, like a lot of teams that would go 0-6 in groups, wasn't seeded against Riddle, because they would have easily beaten them, right? Like, it was so unlucky getting.
Not only did they play so many games, they had one of the hardest groups. People were saying the hardest group, so it was a bit of a shame for them in the end. But I think that now, go on.
I was going to say that, of course, set up for everyone on Twitter to then say, see, the seeding was right. This region isn't any good.
Yeah,
and it's like they set up the pins for them to just knock it down and. Okay, good one, guys.
I hated that. I hated that so much.
I think as well, though, but now there is that incentive of you get to play with Feb. Like, there'd be so many players you would hope who would look at that and be like, I get to play with Febvin if I play in the NLC. That is such an experience, which I think is, and even like, I don't think they'll get the chance of like scrims, because normally the academy teams scrim against each other, but the fact that you get to play competitive games with Arome, with Febvin, and even like some of the upcoming players who are in that roster as well, Like that for me is an incentive enough for some players, I would say.
Well,
I think this is going to be a really good year for rookies, like rookies in general, who know that they most likely won't go to EU Masters elsewhere, but this is where they can finally start their competitive career and really get that going. And as you said yourself earlier, there's a lot of grassroots scenes, not only in the UK with the UKLC and then Newell or whoever does the second division. I don't really know who that is.
UKEL, yeah, and then they have Newell.
Right.
We have loads. There's loads now. There's a full system.
Those are the same. Those are the same stars in Sweden. It's the same. There's Norway. There's the same in Denmark. Like there's grassroots all over the place, and I can only imagine that those youngsters are so hungry to get out there and really prove themselves. They're probably not going to beat Featherman, but they're going to learn a lot, and I think that is something that people are going to look forward to.
And then imagine. If one of them doesn't make EU Masters and another team beats them,
that'd be
how good would that look for that player?
That's the thing, right? If you are the players that beat either BTXL or Fnatic Ryzen, you're going to be remembered. Then your name will not be forgotten. And that's kind of the thing. That's high risk, high reward. If you think you're that good, you're not scared away by D teams and think you can create a roster that can actually beat them, then you can be set for the next split. Like if you beat one of these, then you're going to be the name everyone is going to be talking about.
Well, I'm thinking especially like of the Nordic region, like Danish mid laners is like, that's like the whole flipping production line, isn't it? So if there's any region where having someone like Featherman playing, it should be incentive for these kind of youngsters to try and show their worth. Because if we're saying about players that don't want to play because they can't go to EU Masters this split, well, maybe I don't know, you could try and think 1 or 2 splits in advance and think if I sort of take the hit and expect probably won't go to EU Masters playing in the NLC, but at least if you show yourself and show that you can go toe to toe with people like Forbiven or top laners with the Rome players that have just been in the NEC, that could even be your platform to get maybe just next split a slightly better ERL team that could maybe go to EU Masters and work your way from there. So kind of just different ways of looking at it really. But talking of players going from ERLs to the NEC, one thing I want to kind of get off my chest, because this is literally wound me up so much this week, was after Dan's announcement from XL and seeing the response on Reddit and stuff from...
I hate it. I hate it.
Because actually, talking of UKEL,
wait.
Synergy, who...
Can I...
yeah, go for it.
Can I just... I haven't seen this, because I stayed away from this post, but I'm betting you they mentioned Rift Rivals. Was Rift Rivals mentioned about how he didn't do that well for Rift Rivals?
Rift Rivals. I remember seeing he's not looked any good when he's had his chances, which is that's the only chance.
But like I said, his chances is Rift Rivals, and let's be honest, like it's not. That's like saying like MagiFelix had his chances in I think it was at the LEC, and he looked bad. Yeah, only because Nemesis was playing bot lane, and stuff like that. It's like there was so many different. People don't seem to watch how he's developed in the league in the past year or so.
While we're talking about it, because I sometimes I just can't help myself, and on the Reddit thread I replied to one of them.
Don't do that.
We'll keep talking. I'm just going to find it quickly. Basically, okay, here we go. So, someone said the comment of he doesn't look very good, and then someone backed him up saying Dan was excellent on Fnatic Rising, and someone says no, he wasn't, Lamau. And then so I kind of just said, well, over the last 2 years he's been with him, he's won every split. So like what?
He's not just won every split; he's been
dominated him.
One of the players of the tournament.
Yeah,
he's been the best jungler outside of ERLs.
Yes.
Like
it's also just the fact that. Yeah, he did swap in time with Broxah back then in LEC, and they still preferred Broxah, Fnatic, and went with that. And ever since that happened, people were like, "Oh, he's just bad then. He couldn't replace Broxah, who would go on that year to be in the World's Finals, right?" Like, it's just, and it's also just saying that players can improve. Just because when you remember this player, he wasn't the best jungler in the world, doesn't mean that he is not going to improve when you're not thinking of it. Because you well know that these Redditors did not watch NLC.
Exactly.
They did not watch him play. They did not watch how good he is when it's a pathing meta. Like when Graves and Italy was meta, watching that was just like, wow, this is really what we want from this guy because he's so fucking intelligent, right? And it's always what's been said about this jungler from a caster perspective, analyst perspective, player perspective, like whoever is in the scene. And I think that is Dan going to be the best jungler you're going to see in the LEC? No. But is he going to be as shit as Redis says? Of course not. He's a great jungler, and I think he's a good extension, especially what Excel wants to build as well. I think that he's a guy that you can really build upon just because of how intelligent he is and what he brings to a roster as well.
And you're talking about the fact that like the fact that Dan was considered as a potential replacement for what Brox would have been, like that's the reason why they subbed him in. It's like, let's see what this guy can do. And yeah, maybe have not reached like the heights, but with maybe that's just one of those things. You can have even an off day and stuff like that. And he wasn't great. Let's be completely honest, he wasn't brilliant. Yeah, when they were subbed in. But there are a lot of factors behind that. But the fact that he was considered for Fnatic means that then people are saying, well, for XL or for other teams, he's not worth it. Like, that for me is, I think, so like narrow-minded in terms of thinking, because Fnatic is one of the biggest organizations in the LEC. Yeah, just because he did not as great there means that he cannot do it in any other organization. I think it's just insane. It's like you would like that's just I can't fathom it. Like, really.
And they're like, Fnatic is a team that usually does well to find like rookie players, and for them to keep him on the books for 2 years, I don't think they would have done it unless they saw something in him. And for all we know, that they, who's to say they did just let him go? They might have. I'd be surprised if they didn't want to keep him on Fnatic Rising. But of course, he's had an LEC offer. He's not gonna stay, is he? So
and the rumor with Dan was as well that Misfits last year tried to acquire Dan, but Dan was still in contract, and Misfits didn't want to buy the buyout Fnatic had onto him. So the rumor was in the scene that Fnatic still kept him because they wanted to develop him. So it's just like Excel is not the first organization to go out there and try and be interested in Dan. Fnatic, as you said yourself, they actually thought about having him in the LEC. It's just so mind-boggling because that is 3 LEC teams now who saw interest in this player, and Reddit is still like, nah, in my opinion, better. Like, I know exactly what this guy is.
Literally, I don't know what winds me up more, this or just the MagiFelix like mental issues, because both of them it's just nonsense. And on Twitter and that I just can't help but get involved with both of them either. But it's just clearly people that just don't watch the games. They've heard something, or they remember seeing their name somewhere 2-3 years ago, and that's it. Like, it's just stuck in their head now. And
well, it's like I'm not gonna name him because he's just a friend of mine. Like, he's not even in the scene. He doesn't follow anywhere else. He follows the LEC, and I mentioned the name Sencux. So I was like, Sencux has done really well. He's developed. He seems to be developing as a player. He's took on this kind of leadership role, and he's in EU Masters. And his reply was, Sencux is the worst player in the world because all he's heard from him since is when he was it like 0-18, I think it was, in the LEC, or like when he had a really bad time in, I think it was EULCS.
It was that old Misfits roster, but that was players like Soas, Gorilla, like Sencux, like that just didn't work out with each other. But at the same time, that was still
exactly. But that's perception for him. Like, he if he ever saw Sencux anywhere near the LEC, he would immediately be one of those people who would be like, this is the worst sign of all time, even without even looking at what the player has done. Because of that perception does stay with people, and it's something that I only see really happen in esports. Like, because I think there's this age kind of debate of how long is longevity in esports and stuff. People seem to think that if you can't do it at 19, 20, you're not going to do it at 22, 23. When like normal development dictates that actually you maybe not be as good in your first couple years of playing League of Legends competitively. You might be better in your 4th or 5th year competitively. Obviously, it goes different ways, but there's never really that opinion for the general consensus, and I find it odd.
And just that whole stigma about, when you get to like your mid-20s, you have slow reaction and stuff like that. No, fuck off, Phelan. Like, that's not how it works. Like, it's literally just that. Like, in Counter-Strike, you have people who are 30 who still compete in League. Like, people will still go on, and I swear to God, it's not because they have lower, reaction or anything like that. There's a reason, like, players like Doublelift went on to play as long as he did, and when he didn't play anymore, it was not because of reactions, or it was not because of growing old. It was because of lack of motivation, of doing the same thing over and over again. Of course, that happens when you grow up and get older, but even Xmitty was regarded one of the best NA junglers for so long as well. Like, the whole argument of age still being a thing is just so like old at this point. Like,
one of Reckless's best years ever as a professional was last year.
Yes.
Like that, and I don't think that's even like contentious. Like, everybody was unanimous that this has been some of the best that Reckless has ever played in his career. so there's no debate about age there at all, And so I feel like while age can be a factor, many things can be a factor. Motivation, like you said, there are a lot of other things which could happen. But I want to just talk about, can we touch on MagiFelix? Because do we see MagiFelix going into the NLC, or is he just going to take, I've heard nothing about where MagiFelix is going. I've heard that he's even willing to swap roles, I think he said, because, he's challenger in every role. So why wouldn't you? Why is this player not getting, hopefully he does get picked up. I'd like to see him in the NLC, but I doubt it at this point.
I don't know. It really is a strange one. I don't know if even the stigma's just stuck on him now from that. But then you'd think teams can be smarter than that. They've seen him, like with Dan, they've seen him win the last 4 splits in a row. He's been one of, if not the best mid laner in pretty much every split that he's played as well. Yeah, it seems weird that an academy side or another sort of top ERL side isn't after him.
It's just so weird because when you kind of hire players, what you usually do is that you'll have a conversation with them as well. It's not just having a tryout. It's actually speaking with the player. What kind of personality are you? Are you something I see fit in a roster where we're going to be working with 4 other individuals? And, I just can't imagine that people are not giving him that chance. It's just a bit weird to me. I think that you can kind of find other players that, I can understand if your argument is that you want to try out new prospects, because with MagiFelix you kind of know what you're getting at this point. You're getting a really solid mid laner that will do well, but some people want to have a mid laner where they can be the next leader, for example, where the pop-up potential is just there. Whereas the stigma around leader now, even though he doesn't make NLC, he's probably way more popular mid laner right now in the eyes of ERLs rather than MagiFelix is, just because of the potential, the mechanics of that player as well.
Yeah. And as well, you've got Febervin as well. We're also got to say, they've replaced him with Febervin. For me, I feel like there's only a few players which I could say, oh wow.
Originally, that was a package
leader.
It was a package deal between Maxi. So first it was leader, but leader wanted to stay with Mousesports because Mousesports allowed him to create his own roster, and that's why Mousesports didn't really hold that many tryouts, because leader could pick between what players he wanted on that roster. And then after that, Maxi and Senkux actually was a package deal going on to Fnatic Rising. It was actually Senkux who was supposed to play for Fnatic Rising in the beginning, but then Fefervin became free agent, and then they chose Fefervin instead. So that was kind of when it went. And then a Go Rogue wanted Senkux, and as far as I've heard, they didn't even give him a tryout. They straight up just handing him a contract and just made Senkux just signed that. That's the rumor I've heard.
I kind of wish he was on Fnatic Rising now, because the mate who talks about Senkux being the worst is a Fnatic fan. So I would have loved to have seen his reaction to that. Oh, that would have been brilliant. But Febervin's okay, I guess, to be honest.
Yeah, he's not Senkux, but he's all right. That guy, I've heard some good things about him, right?
I am interested to see though if MagiFelix does role swap.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see him play every position. I wonder if he's solid at every position.
Yeah, maybe because if he's challenger on every role, he must have a decent understanding of how the roles work, and then maybe I don't know, maybe there's a jungler or support that could help him, and he'll know what the other players need. He might be, never know, might be better. We've got Mikma in the chat is trying to bait us, saying Dan will suck in the LEC, but that's with a kappa at the end, so I think that might have been a bit of a piss take. But yeah, definitely. I think it would be interesting to see if he does role swap, and would be sad to see him not in the NLC, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine any organization that would have the budget for him and kind of feel like this is going to be worth it. I think that the most realistic scenario is somewhere along LVP or LFL, or someone who's actually able to also pay at a pretty good salary, where even if you're not a top tier team, right? But it's definitely an interesting conversation. I think he could do it. I could think of a MagiFelix being a good support. It's a role that doesn't require too many mechanics, but if you have it, then you're a really good support, and the intelligence behind it. And as you said, if you've gone challenger with all 5 roles as a support, where you have time to look around the map as well, you really don't have the same pressure that you have on as a mid laner. So that there's a lot of possibilities that you can certainly do as well.
For sure. I think that might be a point where we can maybe start wrapping it up for this one. Is there any topics you guys had in mind? Anything you wanted to cover?
I'm just interested, Guldborg, kind of what's your plans kind of like for the future? You hoping to be on the NLC next time, or casting worlds, potentially is that on the radar?
So I was recently obviously LPL is searching for casters, and I was recommended to go to the LPL by a lot of friends and people in this scene as well, and I was even talking with one of the guys from LPL as well. But I'm just thinking myself personally in the spot where I am right now is that this year I've been focusing so much on my career, like so much has happened. Like in the spring split, I didn't even have Dreamhack, right? I wasn't even getting properly paid for being a caster. Then all of a sudden, I get NLC in my first split, not even year, but split of being a caster on the NLC. I get EU Masters as well, and go to that. I'm at Flames with a pretty decent salaries as well, right? Like I'm not struggling at all. So I think to me right now is that I've overworked myself so hard this year that I kind of want to keep it low. My dream scenario is still doing the same at Flames right now. It's going to on and casting at the NLC, especially if we're not doing offline, because that just makes it way more doable for me, like working from home and having a well-balanced life, and then kind of figuring out myself as a person, because I'm kind of young. I'm only 21, right? And I've made it this far in the industry already. So it's like I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I don't just want to go to China right now, even if I had the possibility to do so, just because I don't know if I would be happy, because I know it's just a straight up casting booth camp where I'm going to be focusing even more on work rather than anything else. So for me right now, I think next year is going to be, I really want to be at the NLC. I want to keep going and doing my job at Flames. And then I kind of just want to try and be more happy in life, find out what I want to do as hobbies outside of esports or stuff like that to do. Just, I don't know, figuring out what there is in life for me as well.
And I think as well, if you go to the LPL, we can't have any Denmark memes anymore.
That's kind of
not many
true.
of them there.
Like, I was thinking of that as well. Like, that's not going to work over there. That's my brand. How do I make that brand work over there?
Definitely.
Yeah, you're just gonna have a Danish flag for all your LPL predictions, and then just be like, what?
So basically, so turning down the LPL to stay in the NLC.
Well, I didn't apply, right? But like, if I got it, I would have turned it down. Like, if I applied, then
if Excoundrel is keeping you hostage, just blink twice.
No, like for real, Excoundrel is like I've met a lot of people in the industry, right? And some people are good and some people are bad. I can say that for sure, but I gotta say, Excoundrel he's really embracing that dad role of in esports, where he's just trying to take care of everyone. He's been the biggest support, the one who's been giving me the most feedback and everything. Like, huge shout out to Excoundrel. He's literally just the best.
And then as a final thing, then how was it having Frosk on the desk? And then obviously I think that she tweeted you. She specifically tweeted you out as well afterwards.
So the reason why that happened, it's a bit funny. So when Frosk originally was supposed to join the NLC, she tweeted out, "I can't wait to join Trouble, Orcs, and Veteran," or adding them in Twitter on the desk, where she forgot me. Like, I was not included in that. So it's like, oh, she doesn't know who I am. That's okay. Hopefully she will know who I am afterwards. And before she had her last split, I made a tweet myself where I said, "Oh, I can't wait to go on the desk tonight with all these people," and I didn't include Frost. And then she was like, "Wait, why are you doing this?" Because she's and then I explained the story to her. And then while I was explaining that story, ranting to her, like, "You forgot me, you did this," she made that tweet. I get a notification on my phone. I look down on my phone and I'm like, "What the fuck have you just done?" Like, what? I would say, like, I stopped.
Oh yeah, because you didn't know exactly what had been said at first, so you were just thinking, is she going to be like unprofessionalism of some people here?
Yeah, I was looking, I was opening, and then it was just. It was mind-boggling. I think I pinned the tweet as well, just because like that was so huge for me. Like, and in the beginning, working with Frosk, working with Medic, you're like, they're on the screen, we're broadcasting, we're professional, talking matchups, but like pre-game, every time I was just like, holy shit. Like, I was such a fucking fanboy, but I had to keep it down when they're there, obviously, and then speaking to them, you get into a more normal kind of flow, and they're genuinely really good and fun people to be around with, like really, really fun. But it was just like, I was just like, holy shit, like all the time.
Who would you like then, if there was anyone they could get as a guest next split to cast alongside? Who would it be? Who is your ideal partner?
Yeah, I think, damn, on the analyst desk, I think Lyric from the LPL, he's a newcaster as well, but he's so good. Like, just listening to him, I think he's incredibly talented. I think he would be awesome to have here. But going from Europe, like, I think it'd be awesome having Quickshot play-by-play cast NLC, like, just because of, when you hear Quickshot's voice, you're used to finals, worlds, all these stuff. Like, it just gives you chills, right? So, like, kind of that as well. But I would love to also just have some more players and more calm personalities on the desk as well. So it was not always, because my feedback to Dreamhack was that having Frosk and Medic on for so long got a bit redundant. I kind of, even though the big personalities, I personally wanted more variety. So it's not always just the same. So it's like coaches, players, whatever. I think it'd be nice to highlight their brands and personalities as well.
Because you build the brands, like, if you could be able to not only like increase the viewership and get that viewership boost, but then build the brands as a whole with it, you could then get fans who would just tune in to support those as well. I think that's very smart. And I think as well, like, obviously we don't know kind of, well, Dreamhack has been very much clear that there would have been a lot more they would have liked to have done if it wasn't for like the pandemic. But I kind of hope that when things get done, we get to see a lot more kind of involvement with coaches. I know one thing which I did praise Dreamhack for was they had like little video packages which they did. I think one was on Taiki and stuff like that, and there was only a couple of them. I think another one was on Triple Ink as well. And I thought those were really good in terms of kind of like describing kind of these new faces and giving them kind of a backstory and a way of kind of getting behind them. And hopefully they can continue doing that. But it's quite difficult to do that, obviously, when it's hard to film stuff right now. So.
For sure, and a lot of it lies on the organizations as well, because in a world where the organizations are the one with most contact to players, it's kind of on them, even though you're not obligated to do it, to kind of create that content around your own brand and the players. And then in turn, you're also creating content for the league itself, right? If it was like an offline location where Dreamhack can actually film players or have a media day and fly people there, get some nice photos in, some evergreen content you can use throughout the split as well, obviously that'd be way cooler. But yeah, as you said, it's kind of limited what you can do. But that was also my main feedback. Like we have these feedback meetings with Dreamhack, which is also what I like. They like to listen and they want to improve, and they ask talent a lot and players and teams and reach out to them. I think one of the things I told him was that I want more content, not only content about players, but also content where we as casters and talent are giving editors where we can work with what we want to do with this league as well. Because I think that a lot of us, we also come from we all started the grassroots. Like no one just starts at NLC or something like that. So we kind of know what it's like to want to have a brand, to want to grow yourself. And I want to project that onto the players. Obviously, my main concern has been Danish player. I kind of want to go into, but I also want to go into the other Nordics, because right now, obviously, I have a huge Danish backing, but I want to expand that onto the other Nordic organizations, just because that I'm the only Nordic cast that you have. The rest of them are UK talent. So I think it's kind of on me and on my shoulders to make sure that I highlight the Nordic talent and personalities as well.
Nice. Look forward to it then. Yeah, I think that's a good place to probably wrap it up then on a bit of a nicer note than some of the earlier topics. So
I am so glad that when you told me what we would be talking about, Lee, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a sad podcast. I just want to feel a bit happy today, but yeah, no, I'm glad that we had a good chat, and we did discuss the serious topics, but then we could still keep it as lighthearted as we possibly can, which is always good. So thanks to you, Guldborg, as well, for helping with that as well. It was I just didn't want to talk about the other things sometimes. But...
Well, thanks for the invite.
No
Because of that topic, it was actually really funny to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. Right then, with that then, if anyone is still knocking about on Twitch, I had a fair few people in the chat today, which is very nice. So if there's anyone watching that still hasn't followed, do feel free to drop a follow on there. We had a couple as well, Rinch TV and PG the Twister throughout the episode, so thanks for those. Otherwise, if you're watching back later on YouTube or Spotify, of course you can follow there as well. And all of our Twitters are on the screen, so you can follow us personally. And yeah, with that, thanks for listening.